Hi, welcome to this episode of Community TV from Peerlist. We're here today with Ken Westin of Tripwire. Ken has an interesting sneak peek into his DEFCON presentation to share with us. Ken, do you want to tell the viewers something about what you're going to be talking about at DEFCON?
Sure. Prior to my work here at Tripwire, I was what you would maybe call a cyber stalker, a professional one, where I was actually tracking criminals. I developed various tools, techniques, and technologies that were actually used to bring, roughly half a dozen people to jail. And in the process of recovering stolen devices, for example, many times we'd actually unveil larger organized crime rings. We'd solve a lot of other crimes in the process. And through that, I learned a great deal, not just about technology, but also about people and how criminal syndicates work. And that's what I'm going to be presenting at DEFCON. I'm going to be illustrating, sort of the thought process of how some of these tools were developed, how I took tools that were meant for malicious hacking and turned it into sort of a white hat tool for people to help recover their own stolen devices, how that evolved from USB devices into laptops and then cell phones, and then as well as a tool I developed for tracking stolen cameras by finding images posted online with EXIF data. And through the whole process, I'll talk about the technologies, how they were developed. I'll also be releasing source code as well, showing some examples of how you can do this yourself. And then I'll also move into discussing how I was able to use this technology to track criminals, but also how criminals can use these same techniques and tools and data to track you, and talk about some of the privacy implications that consumers need to be aware of, as well as things that businesses can actually do to help filter and clean up that data so that it's not as easy for criminals to help track people down and start doing a better job of protecting people's privacy.
All right, so basically you're tracking bad guys and you care about privacy. Can you actually work from an Infosec vendor role and care about both? Is that easy for you, or is that complicated?
It was really difficult with the tools I built, but it was always in the back of my mind. So there was always, I think there was a balance, right? Is trying to make sure that we're developing these tools and that they weren't abused. And actually from that, there was a lot of innovation that came about. When we developed the mobile product, I was really concerned about, we had a backup tool. So if your device was stolen, you can remotely wipe all the device data, but then still have your images and contact information backed up. And I was very concerned about that, actually storing and backing the images and other data up in the cloud. Being paranoid, I'm like, well, what if we're hacked? And then people would say, well, we're being 100% secure, and I'm like, no, that's not the way it works. We need to plan for that as a contingency. Is that what if we were breached and a hacker has access to all of our customers' private images? And so to mitigate the risk, we're able to actually set a privacy key.
Hey, hold on a second. I'm going to need to edit this. My daughter came running out of the bedroom and is playing tricks on me.
No worries.
She's misbehaving. So I'm just going to pause the recording for a second. Sorry, I'm back to recording. I'm going to have to edit out that piece. I'm sorry. She was in bed and my wife is down there and should be taking care of them. Somehow she escaped out of the bedroom.
It's all good.
All right.
Yeah. So anyway, back to that. I'll recap that. So I think balancing privacy with the usefulness of the technology was a challenge. Actually, when I was developing these tools, I saw that there were a lot of problems actually with some of the competitors and how they were implementing the technologies. Some of them would actually have backdoors that their monitoring teams would have access to the computer, or they would store images and things in a cloud-based service, and the images and stuff weren't encrypted. So when, for example, with the mobile security product, I was concerned about storing images and contact information in the cloud. My fear was that what if we're hacked, or on the other side, what if the FBI or a government agency wanted that information from our customers? How would we be able to secure that? This is before all the NSA stuff, so I'm not saying I can see into the future, but being paranoid has its privileges. So what we did was we made it so that there was an encryption key that they would enter, a privacy key, when they installed the application. It wasn't stored in the cloud; it was only stored on the device itself. So they would enter that, and then images and contact data would be encrypted with that before it gets uploaded into the cloud service. So even I would have access to their photos. If I would need to help them with an investigation, or if they wanted me to help them decrypt that, they would have to provide that encryption key to me, and then I could help decrypt that information. On the flip side as well, if law enforcement wanted that information, they would have to they could get the encrypted blob from us, but then when they say, hey, unencrypt this, it's like you have to go to the customer for that. We don't have the encryption key. And then, of course, they would have to get that from them, and there would have to be a legal process for them to get that key. So that was sort of a nice, kind of a silver lining to that process. But also for me, from a business standpoint, that also relieved me of a lot of liability. If we were hacked, for example, and someone did get access to all that data, it helps release me of that liability. I don't have to worry about those images being spilled out online. When you looked at the case with Apple, when celebrity backups were getting hacked, and you saw these nude photos that were being released, again, it's sort of, I kind of, I guess I sort of saw into the future. Yeah, so there's a lot of that was happening, and I see a lot of that too with a lot of security applications that have actually backup images into the cloud. People don't realize, if you can log in online, you can see that image is not encrypted. And so a hacker will have access to that, or anyone else that's served a court order to that organization, they're going to have access to that information. So privacy, again, I was very paranoid about it. And when I did collect information from a device, some competitors, they were actually grabbing screenshots from applications. For me, that was crossing a line into wiretapping laws. So we'll grab the web camera image of who's in front of the computer. We'll get IP address. We'll get location. But what I found with law enforcement is that that's all the information that they need. What we're able to do at that point is we're actually able to get a location. We're able to get a time. We're able to get a person in front of the computer at that time. And that's all the information that we actually need to prosecute. So, getting other information like, opening up a back door into the computer, doing key logging, grabbing screenshots, things like that. What that does is it just increases the risk to the business. It also decreases the amount of privacy and a lot of risk associated to the consumer. So, why bother doing that? If you don't need the information, don't collect it.
All right. The tools you built, where are they today? Have they become obsolete with the changes in OS versions and so on, or are they still in use?
They're still in use. I serve on the board of the company, but for a lot of personal reasons, I stepped down, just burned out. Found I'm a really good technologist, but being a CEO of a company requires a larger commitment and a different set of skills that I wasn't really ready to commit to any further. In a lot of ways, I didn't agree with some of the direction that some things were going. So I resigned. I still help advise on the technology side, but I'm better suited to work, more as like a security analyst, with a little more hands-on with the technology, developing the tools, helping to solve security problems, not necessarily business problems. It continues on to this day. But at DEFCON, I'll be releasing some scripts, even stuff that wasn't actually released, where we actually never turned into a product. I'll be showing examples of how to build a Trojan a USB-based Trojan for Macs, for example. How to exfiltrate data out of a device using iTunes. So it'll be kind of interesting.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
you probably know I'm going to be at DEFCON. I'm seeing you live, I think.
Oh, great! Yeah, hope to definitely say hi when you're there. It'll be great to catch up.
Definitely. All right. So, what do you think about the chances that other similar tools that others are employing, similar to what you built, would have the same paranoid privacy protections built in? Do you think others would care about doing that?
No, that's one thing that kind of ticked me off. We actually turned down customers. If you remember, there was a case where schools were actually had a case where they got caught spying on students, and that was one of our competitors. And that's a problem that I had always saw, was that you have one administrator that has access to all these systems, especially with students. That's just going to, whether it's intentional or not, there's a real risk for abuse. And so, they had that issue, and then there were some legal ramifications with it. There was a hurt to their brand. And so, that's an issue that I saw. And a lot of other companies are doing this. I'm not going to name names, but there's some mobile security applications that do backup and things, but they have very invasive permissions on your device, and they have access to all your photos, and they're uploading that to the cloud. But I don't see them actually implementing a lot of the same security controls. I don't see them really seeing that as an issue. And a lot of that's because it's driven by shareholders, right? That there's value in that money, or value in that data that they're collecting, and their business model is sort of more freemium focused. It's not about really providing value to the consumer themselves. So I always say that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And especially when it comes to a mobile security application where you're not paying for it, well, look at the permissions on the application. Look at what it has access to. Look at what it's uploading. You should be concerned about some of that. I actually serve as an advisor for another local startup here that's focused on privacy for mobile applications, where we'll actually tell on applications. So we'll actually look at any application you have on your phone, what data it's accessing, what IP it's connecting to. If you have a wallpaper application and it's accessing your location, we'll tell you that. So we're doing a lot of that. And it's like a free application. It's spyaware.b, and you can download that for free. It's an Android application. There's a lot of challenges with building an application like that kind of eats its own dog food. For example, they couldn't use Google's location services. We couldn't use Google location mapping because of the overly invasive permissions that it requires to actually run that application. It gathers a lot of information from your device. So we had to build a separate mapping application that didn't have that third-party library, which was a challenge. So I found a lot of times, mobile applications, they use ad networks, they'll use, mapping applications, third-party services where they don't actually mean to invade your privacy, but through the use of these third-party applications and tools, they do. So then you'll find that a lot of your data, actually gets transmitted to services that you never intended it to.
All right. Well, I think that was a really good sneak peek into your DEFCON presentation, Ken. And are you willing to here now promise the viewers and the listeners on Peerless that you'll be doing Q&A before and after your presentation on the Peerless website? So if anyone have questions they would like to ask you either beforehand or afterwards, that you'll go there and take care of it, reply to them.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to. It might actually help me with my presentation to adjust my slides. If people have questions or something they want to know about beforehand, I'm more than happy to answer it during the presentation, and then we can talk about it afterwards as well.
I'm very, very glad to hear that. So thank you very much for being here, and have a good working day. I guess your day is just starting there, or halfway through at this point. So thanks a lot, Ken.
Thank you.
Bye.